Hey guys, it's Deepak Shukla here from Pearl Lemon Boba, and today I want to talk to you about how to start a bubble tea business in 2023 or 2024. First of all, let me start off by saying that I am the founder of Pearl Lemon Boba. So we have several bubble tea shops in London. We've got a couple of bubble tea franchisees, and this video is going to give you a brief introduction on everything that you need to know if you're looking to start your own bubble tea business. So first of all, feel free to, of course, get in touch with us if you're looking for any further consulting or training around bubble tea. But generally speaking, here are some of the things if you're thinking about starting your bubble tea business that you need to know. So first of all, the most attractive thing about opening a bubble tea business, and this relates to my background. I had no background in bubble tea. When I first got into the niche, I had never done anything in relation to bubble tea before. I was new also to the food and beverage space, so it was a huge journey and adventure to me. So opening up a bubble tea shop seemed scary at the time, but I want to talk to you about why I decided to get into it and what that means for you. So let's go through some of the key elements that are important when starting a bubble tea business. So the first thing, and let me go ahead and start creating some notes for you so you can feel free to contact us, by the way, info@Pearl Lemon Group if you've got any questions, need any help or advice. But the first thing to know is that with bubble tea, there is a low startup cost, okay? So that's one of the first most attractive things about opening a bubble tea business, that there's a low startup cost, okay? So why is there a low startup cost? Let's get into it. So the cost of product is relatively cheap, okay? Now the reason the cost of product is relatively cheap is because it's focused on powders and syrups, okay? And that means it does not require any expensive machinery, okay? So that also, so look, if you think about it, because we own a coffee shop as well, if you're interested in getting our insights on how to start a coffee shop business, there's going to be insights as well. Also, click on the link in the description below and you can get some of our videos in that area. But fundamentally, when you've got a bubble tea business, the startup cost is low. The reason that the startup cost is low is because the cost of the product is relatively cheap. Of course, that does not mean that the quality is bad, but it does mean that when you're looking at powders, when you're looking at syrups, and you're looking at mixing powders and syrups with, for example, ice, then fundamentally, which is water, as well as then potentially tea bags for the tea in bubble tea, then fundamentally you're not going to have an expensive product. And because it's not expensive, it does not require expensive machinery. So what is expensive machinery? Expensive machinery is, for example, in a coffee shop, a coffee machine, okay? That's the other important element here. It doesn't require a coffee machine. It doesn't require, for example, a pizza or a stone-baked or wood-fire oven. It doesn't require any kind of significant pressure cookers or anything of that ilk that would verge on potentially significant commercial cost. Because of that also, it doesn't require much food licensing, okay? So when you think about, for example, licenses in relation to anything, even if you decide to do anything that's hot, there are additional safety requirements. If you decide to do anything that involves food, there's additional food and safety requirements. Now you do need to get a food health license, but getting through it is much more inexpensive than ultimately food licensing. Now this also means you don't need a building with a food license, okay? This is also important because you don't require the type of licensing that comes with food, i.e. you need ventilation, i.e. you need a more substantial set of ultimately requirements because you're going to be cooking on the premises or you're going to have an open fire on the premises. It does mean that you don't need a building with an extended food license, which means that your ability to find a location is much more effective, okay? So these are some of the reasons for why there is a low startup cost with bubble tea as compared to other food and beverage businesses, okay? Now, if we continue down that route, and we're gonna keep going with our list and keep building our list out, as you can see, let's see if I can expand this out. There you go. The margins are relatively good, okay? So you can get bubble tea in the UK, certainly anything from probably £4.50 up to £8.50. I think I've seen it. And you have a COGS, which is cost of goods sold, or rather you have an initial product cost. You have an initial product cost. Here's my, I don't know if you can see my cat. Initial cost of maybe £1 to £2, often less. Okay, so if you're looking at that kind of return, you're looking at a good ultimately margin upon bubble tea. Okay, a good margin upon bubble tea. The next thing to consider is that bubble tea is in a growth market. Okay, bubble tea is in a growth market. So for that reason, it means that you can enter this market ultimately and be in a market that is set to grow. Okay, it's set to grow. So for these reasons, when you're thinking about how to open a bubble tea business, these are the reasons for why you should start a bubble tea business. And with these elements, you don't need a building with a food license. It also means because of these elements, if we continue here, sorry, it means you can get cheap rent, because you can look at ultimately places that don't need licensing to a very comprehensive extent. And also 7, it can be an add-on to an existing business. And this is because there is such a small space requirement. If you've ever had bubble tea, you can find bubble tea in kiosks. Ultimately, you can find bubble tea shops in little pop-up stores. So there's a lot of ultimately opportunities, given the compact space that you need for a bubble tea shop to ultimately get it to grow and be a success. So there you have it. This is part 1 of this short training series on how to start a bubble tea business. So catch me in the next video. We'll be going through some of the other elements that relate to starting a super successful bubble tea business.